Right now, we welcome G.J. Reynolds to the interview session here. He's an author and a public speaker who says there's lessons to be learned watching the NCAA championship teams as they battle it out for the Final Four, that we can apply these lessons to achieve our own success. It's his new book, The Playful and Powerful Warrior Within You, and we say good evening to G.J. Reynolds. And G.J., how are you?
I'm doing great, Mark. I'm excited to be part of your show.
Well, it's nice to be having you on our show here a little bit. And tell us, you're tight with Dale Brown a little bit, the former LSU great Tiger basketball coach, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up in Louisiana in Baton Rouge, and when Dale Brown came to Baton Rouge, it was right after the excitement of Pistol Pete Maravich, and obviously LSU is a big football school, and obviously still is, and he came to town, and he knew he had an uphill battle to get more basketball fans because, Pete Maravich had left, and, so the basketball lost interest with the fans, and so he became a preacher of life, and that really struck an accord with me, and a lot of basic life principles, and then how do you apply that to basketball. And I met him at age 11 at a basketball camp, and I've been in contact with him off and on through most of my life, and then I moved away to Kansas a few years after I'd met him, and still stayed in touch with him, and to this day we've actually reunited our relationship over the last few years, and speak to him pretty much on a weekly basis, and he's been a great coach, a great mentor in life principles for me.
The Playful and Powerful Warrior Within You, again endorsed by former LSU basketball Hall of Fame coach, the great Dale Brown. How do we relate to college March Madness that I watched so many games this past weekend to the life on the floor and off the floor and tied in the book?
Well, I would say there's a couple of things, and obviously we had quite a few upsets this weekend, and we had some of the smaller schools such as VCU and obviously, Butler and, Marquette had a big win yesterday over Syracuse. And in each of those games, if you watch those games, you had certain players that just stepped up. So the great players reached down inside of themselves, and they embraced their warrior self. And then great players look for the great moments. And a lot of those games, it came down to the last second, last couple of seconds. And these players, they reached down and they did what they needed to do to carry their team. And also they look for that opportunity to shine. And then they also help raise the bar for the people around them. And one of the chapters in the book is surround yourself with the right people. And a great leader will raise the bar for the people around them. And obviously we want to be around people who are going to help uplift us in our everyday lives.
You're an entrepreneur, and I know you've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly out of it.
Most definitely. I'm a former military sergeant, and I spent 5 years in the military, got out and went to the corporate world, and thought I could venture out and be a successful entrepreneur, had big dreams, goals and aspirations. And my first venture, quick story, I spent all my money that I'd had saved up, and I spent $70,000 to make $50,000 my first venture.
Wow.
So that wasn't very good. So I had to learn how to be successful as an entrepreneur. I still had that passion and belief that I could be successful, and one of the key components is I started looking at other people who were successful and how could I emulate what they were doing and follow that. And then I also went back to my grassroots, like with Coach Dale Brown, and we got a mentor for me that could help guide me and help walk me through some of the things that that person had already gone through, so I could help elevate my success. And so obviously it's worked. Over the last 20 years, I've been pretty much an entrepreneur since that time. And anybody that's listening, I would say, no matter where you're at, it's simply a starting point. And even if you've had some challenges or failures, they're simply a learning lesson, and you can draw upon them to still succeed. And then with the basketball tournament, that's the same thing's happening there. These players are all having challenges at different points, whether they're down by 5 or down by 10, and they come back and win the game. They stay the course, and they band together. And And that's what, some of the key components of the book that I have, which you can find at powerfulwarrior.com to get the book.
They always say it's one shining moment, the playful and powerful warrior within you. Again, endorsed by former LSU basketball and Hall of Fame coach Dale Brown. The great Dale Brown also highlights legendary coaches with John Wooden and Vince Lombardi. And tell us how you tie that in a little bit in the book.
Well, Dale Brown is another. I mean, he's such a great person to draw upon. Is that when he went to LSU, it was his first head coaching job, and so what he wanted to do is like, how do I become a great coach? So he struck up a relationship with Coach John Wooden, who was still coaching at UCLA and won 10 championships in 12 years. He struck up a relationship with Aldo Frupp, who was a former Kentucky coach and a great coach there at Kentucky. He had retired at that point, and so he struck a friendship with him, and he sought counsel of people who were had been successful in their area. And so he went to LSU and just became really good with those relationships, and then he started sharing that information. And then how it ties in with me is that I actually got to meet both Aldo Frupp and John Wooden at the same time at the first LSU Purple Gold game that Dale Brown had.
Wow.
And I went up to him, and my dad encouraged me to go up and meet him, and so I went up to meet him, and Aldo Frupp was the first person, and he just sort of said, "Man, you look like a really fine young man," and patted me on the head and says, just practice the fundamentals in both in basketball and life, and you'll go far. And he handed over the program over to John Wooden, and John Wooden says, just do what he said, and patted me on the head and said, "You just look like a fine young man." And then they handed it on down to the next individual, which happened to be Bob Pettit, who was one of the 50 greatest basketball players and former All-American at LSU.
Yep.
And he says, "You know what? I can't say any more than just do what they said, and you'll go far." And so I got to meet him personally, and then of course, as I got older, I learned a lot about the pyramid success that John Wooden had developed, and so I was talking to Dale Brown one time, and I said, I'd love to, have a signed copy of the Pyramid of Success by John Wooden. And he said, "Well, I'd make that happen." 30 seconds later, I got an email. Here's what to do. And so I sent it off to Coach Wooden, and then he sent me back a whole packet of different items that meant a lot to him, and signed most of them. And one thing that Dale Brown had always said about Coach Wooden is that he always gave more than expected, and that was definitely a case for me. And then so I had another goal that I wanted to actually spend an afternoon with Coach Wooden, and because of Dale Brown, a couple of my business partners, they made that happen, and so I got to spend an afternoon with Coach Wooden in 2008, and obviously he passed away last year, so I got to, achieve one of my childhood goals and dreams, and he's voted the greatest coach of the 20th century and probably the greatest coach of all time in all sports. And so that was the tie. And then, of course, you asked on Vince Lombardi. Vince Lombardi was basically focused on the fundamentals. And even though we're talking about basketball, he was on football. And I think in his early days, Vince Lombardi actually coached basketball when he was first getting started in coaching. And, his whole philosophy was based on getting to the fundamentals and being the best that you are, and not comparing yourself to anyone else. What are the best that you're capable of doing? And when you've done your best, and you also know when you haven't. And so any listener that's out there, that would apply to you. And so those coaches have had impact on me personally. They've had great philosophies that have stood the test of time, and I incorporate some of those into the book, Playful and Powerful Warrior, within you.
No doubt about it. The Playful and Powerful with the Warrior within you. And we want to say thank you so much for joining us here in the Sports Show. Also, our most important question today: who do you like to win the NCAA tournament? I like The Ohio State University. Your pick?
I've got Kansas, and I know that's a sore subject with
yes,
the fans right now after last night. But on the KU, I've got them. I think they're, KU and Ohio State are. Actually have them facing off in the championship. PowerfulWarrior.com to get your copy of the Playful and Powerful Warrior within you. PowerfulWarrior.com.
Okay, well, it should be a lot of fun. We really enjoyed the 10 minutes with you here, and thanks so much for coming on. Stop by and be on the radio again with us, will you?
I'd look forward to it, Mark. Thanks a lot.
All right, we will take a time out on the sports show. We'll come back with more right after this.